All right. Hi, everybody. It's week 6 in our course, I'll say the program, but you are in your third term, almost done, of the program, and week 6 of this course. So tonight we are going to talk about anthropomorphism. Let me share my screen with you. So you can see what we are talking about. Here we go, maybe. Okay. All right. For anybody that's on, when you hear me say or see in my notes anything about anthropomorphism, what does that mean to you? What are we talking about? Anybody? All right. So I feel like when I was growing up, I learned a different word for this. This wasn't a word I was familiar with until I entered the world of academic writing. So if you're not familiar with the word itself, it really just means assigning human qualities to things that are not human. And that could be animals. I found these cute pictures, so I had to use them because I really liked them. But it could be animals, but it could also be a piece of paper or a TV. And we see this a lot in like cartoon drawings where the TV gets up and walks away, or the raccoon comes in and has a conversation, or the microphone dances, whatever it is, anything that is not human that gets assigned human qualities. When I was looking up examples and, pulling ideas to put together for this, so much came up with like film and literature. And I guess I've just never really thought about how much anthropomorphism is really present in the stories we read, the movies we watch, and especially for little kids, which makes sense. But now we're in a world where we are trying to avoid it. So it sounds kind of silly. I know none of you are writing about talking dogs and office attire wearing sloths. So how does this fit in for us? All right, so understanding this in the academic context. And again, just talking about the definition, pretty simple, just assigning those human traits, emotions, intentions, anything that is not human. Why is this an issue for us? And you may still be thinking, what the heck are we talking about? Because again, I'm not writing about talking dogs. So when does this even come into play? So the part of the reason that it's so important is because of like clarity and just making sure that you're writing with precision. And I really liked that word because Dr. Don, who you may not have met yet, and I are actually developing a writing workshop right now. And we actually have precision in the title, and we're talking about DBA writing. So I thought that was pretty on point here, just talking about precision and the clarity within your writing. So on this slide, I have some incorrect examples of anthropomorphism that might be a little more common in doctoral writing than talking dogs. So what I do see commonly from students is the study argues, or the study presents XYZ, the data suggests this. The better ways to write these same ideas are the study's findings indicate, the data analysis reveals. You may not see a huge difference here, but it's in how it's worded. And I know it's all semantics, but it really is in this case. I do want to be clear that anthropomorphism in academic writing is, I won't say it's subjective because there's a definite do's and don'ts, but there's different thoughts on what might be acceptable. So I will tell you that while this is a pretty common correct example, some faculty members may not accept this either. And I have a website that we're going to look at that actually does a good job as well. In our, within our team, it's funny because we have different ideas on what might be acceptable or not. And one of the areas that for me is really gray, when a student or anybody says the organization stated whatever, Some faculty members say, no, you can't say an organization stated because the organization doesn't talk. It's not a human. It's the leaders of the organization. But I do accept organization as not human, but an entity that can sort of speak for itself or present information. Because when you hear in the news or you read an article that Procter & Gamble stated this, it doesn't call out the CEO. And I mean, it might, that there might be some that do, right? But specifically, you're saying Procter & Gamble put out a statement and here's what it says. It doesn't tell you who wrote it, how many people were in a room trying to put it together. It's the company, the organization says that. So organization is one where students typically write that about organizations a lot and will use anthropomorphism there. Again, for me, I'm usually okay with it because I do feel like it's acceptable. But just know that you may run into faculty members who say, that one, no, it still doesn't fly. It's not a human. Okay. Which is why I'm saying these corrected examples that I'm showing you may be okay for most people, but in some cases also may not. So only to further confuse everybody, right? All right, so what are the effects of anthropomorphism? So negative effects, when we're using it, again, like I said at the beginning, there's a loss of clarity and objectivity where, and it may not always be the case that you're losing these, but this is what could happen, right? And then misinterpretation of the research process. So again, if you're saying research says, or applying those human qualities to pieces of your either literature, your research, whatever it is that you're talking about at that time, it tends to get a little bit vague or fuzzy because again, what the research, in what way said this, who said this, how do you know this? So again, just keeping clarity and objectivity in mind will be helpful. So there's two examples here, one that's anthropomorphic and one that is not. The experiment decided. Well, your experiment doesn't decide anything, especially if it's a good experiment. It will not be deciding anything. It will occur and then results will show whatever, right? Again, are results human? No, but you can look at a billboard and say that billboard shows an ad for an animal shelter. And that would be okay because that's what the board is showing, even though the board is not human. So hopefully that example helps to clarify this a little, but this was one of the better sites that I found. It's the University of Arizona, and they do a great job giving examples. I'm making nothing open, but here we go. Okay, so they have a website that kind of walks you through anthropomorphism. You can see there's a lot of information here about it, but I believe it's in the like this. Yes. Okay, so if we click down here, you can see that they're not talking about talking dogs, and the examples are much clearer and applicable to things that you would write, right? So you're writing about articles. So the article from Lassiter and Jones discussed how coffee wakes you up in the morning. Okay, well, again, did the article discuss it or did Lassiter and Jones discuss it in the article? You could also say the article from Lassiter and Jones includes information because you're not assigning a verb to the article that the article can't do. You're using the word includes, which changes how the sentence reads. And then down here, they give you an explanation. So an article cannot discuss something, basically what we were just talking about there. And then here, another one, the experiment attempted to investigate how students learn APA style. Well, the experiment may have been used to investigate this, but the experiment itself did not investigate. So Wheatley attempted to investigate how students learn APA style. That's the researcher, where the experiment was an attempt to investigate the topic. So I do not expect you to be experts on anthropomorphism at this point. It may be something that you still struggle with when you get to your dissertation writing, I can tell you it's something that I will still question myself sometimes when I'm writing something like, wait, do the right results show this, or do I need to word this another way? So for some of you, it may come very easily and naturally, and I commend you. That's great. I am not an English major, so sometimes I even struggle with this stuff. But at least to just be aware of it so that when you see it in a note from a professor, you're not going, what? Like, I keep seeing this. What is this? Or, okay, I know, but how do I fix it? And just being cognizant of it and thinking about ways to reword if necessary. So that's it for what I have to say on the topic. Are there any questions from anybody who's on tonight?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I think this is something I probably struggle with. It's indicative of my writing style when I was reading your examples. Do you know if there's any way to set either Word or Grammarly or something, if there's a way to set settings so that we'll recognize those types of things within those programs?
So that's a great question. I don't believe Word has that capability, and I've never used Grammarly, so I'm not familiar with the capabilities, but maybe we can do a quick Google search and just see. I know I'm not sharing anymore, but I'm searching. Let me just see. Can Grammarly detect anthropomorphism?
Yeah, the reason I ask is because I do sometimes use Grammarly Premium, and I don't believe that it's, at least in the settings that I've used, it seems to leave that in as that anthropomorphic writing
It
is
doesn't catch it.
yeah, it doesn't seem to fix that because
Yeah, so this is what our quick AI answer says, that it doesn't flag it specifically. It can try to detect problematic language, but it's not going to catch specific anthropomorphism the way, in that regard.
okay.
So, no,
Good old fashioned proofreading, I guess.
proofreading, but like I said, it's something I still struggle with. I've been doing this for a long time. And I think I mentioned last week on our video, my work looks great every time I read it. It looks wonderful. We're all our own worst editors. And if you're not, like, how many things can you proofread for, right? You're looking for this, you're looking for that. And oh, now I got to read for anthropomorphism. So I'm not expecting anybody's needle to move from here to here all of a sudden. But again, just to be aware of it, most of us are not deducting major points for anthropomorphism. It's just like, hey, be aware of this, because when you get to your dissertation, you're doing a lot more writing where you're talking about the articles and the findings and the research and the literature. So it becomes, more frequent in your writing. So just to be aware of it and to start, if you see it in one line, maybe address it. You may not catch it in the 3 other lines, but at least, where you're kind of picking up on it.
Yeah, I noticed in a lot of it's used commonly in a lot of business writing where it'll, the Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg will say the data suggests, you constantly see examples. So I think that's where people pick that up, especially if you read a lot of business writing or professional journal.
And the data suggests, it's not correct. But again, it's one of those, like in the slide that I showed. So I gave you the data suggest is the incorrect term or terminology, but the correct wording is the data analysis reveals. And it's like, well, can the data analysis reveal? It's not human, but again, it's just like the billboard can show. So I hear you. And yes, I do think in the business world, which is where everybody is, it's there. But I also think it's hard to also figure out what's the right way to say it. All right, great. Anybody else?
I did do a quick search, and I think what you can do, Zach, maybe in Grammarly, is you can tell it to look for verbs. It can identify your verbs, since that's, when you're using that type of language, it's a verb that you're putting in place. So maybe tell it to do a verb count for you, and it could identify it. Then you could see how you're using your verbs that way. So it may not identify a alternative for you, but you could identify a potential root cause that's leading you to word it that way, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Yeah, I think highlighting the verb and then reading it back and making sure that you're not implying a human characteristic to that verb.
Thank you, Chris. That was really helpful.
Yep. That's the former analyst coming out in me right there.
Perfect. Now, if only Word could do this too, that'd be great. Anybody else? Okay, I'm gonna stop recording. So let me do that. Thanks for watching the video, everybody.